After 11 years of marriage, this man never imagined his wife would suggest something so radical. The request for an open marriage was a shock, something he never wanted, and he found himself forced to accept it. But when his wife saw him prospering with his new lifestyle, she couldn't stand it. Regretful and afraid of losing him, his wife begs to return to what they were. Now he finds himself torn. Is it really possible to go back, or have they crossed a line that can't be undone? My wife asked for an open marriage and then asked to close it because she hated my new social life and personal life. So here I am asking for advice, and the fact is, I kind of understand the approach that everyone will say I should take, especially considering the fact that this kind of story has been posted here before on various occasions. I'm 39 now, and have been married to my 37-year-old wife for 11 years. We've certainly had some very difficult years, but those were in the middle of our marriage, and at the point where we are now. I really thought we had overcome any major issues and learned to live well with each other. Very well, unfortunately. It seems I was very, very wrong about that, as I just discovered. But before I dive into all of this, let me try to provide a bit of context about us and our situation. I'm an academic and work at the university in our town. I always knew I wanted to be a researcher, and when we met, I was already in the early stages of that journey. I'm happy to say I've come a long way, and as I like to say whenever I get the chance, I managed to work with an academic who eventually won a Nobel Prize. So, that's pretty cool, but of course, I've done many other notable things on my own. It's not like that's the only thing I talk about at parties. My wife, on the other hand, is doing well, though in her case, she owns a business. It wasn't what she always wanted to do, but life kind of took her down that path, and she's done well. She owns a beauty salon, a place where people can get their nails and hair done. She's planning to expand into a space where basic cosmetic services can be offered as well, but that's still a long way off. Her credit isn't as good as mine. So the plan is for me to co-sign a loan for her to move forward with the expansion. The point is, after our difficult years, we were doing well financially, and since people always say that this is one of the main reasons couples end up divorcing, I felt a bit more secure knowing that this wouldn't be our type of problem. Well, money definitely wasn't our problem when the issue arose. Honestly, I think the whole reason I'm dealing with this mess is because of the people my wife now spends most of her day with. The kind of gossip and pointless discussions that happen in a beauty salon are never good news, and I really think this new issue came from there. And no, this is a woman who plans to be a writer, and that's the path she was following when we met. So don't say this is something I should have foreseen in any way. The point is, one day my wife came to me and said she wanted to have a discussion about our intimate life. She said there was nothing intrinsically wrong with it, which I expected to hear because I usually do everything she asks and also do my best to learn better ways to please her in that regard. According to her, though, it was like eating the best kind of hamburger every day. And here's the part that almost made me laugh despite how uncomfortable the situation was. Sometimes, you just want a hot dog. I struggled to figure out if she was joking or not, but she was absolutely serious, which honestly surprised me because I had no idea she felt our intimate life was monotonous. That part was a real shock to me. I'm sure I asked her 4 or 5 times if she was serious, but she kept insisting that she was. I asked if it was negotiable in any way or if some kind of ultimatum was being presented, but she just said, "It really won't make me happy if you don't seriously consider it." I think it was then that I realized she was totally serious, and I felt like I was losing my mind. I thought we had gotten past the difficult years, but that was definitely not the case. Because for me, as much as she might have expected me to respond by saying, "Sure, why not?" I hate the idea of non-exclusivity in any romantic relationship. To me, that really defeats the purpose of a relationship. At this point, I haven't given her an answer, but the last time we talked about it, she said, "You're acting like things aren't open for you too." It's not just for me. But honestly, that doesn't make things any better for me. If I'm honest, it really doesn't. So, here I am now. And although I know the obvious answer that everyone here will give is for me to say a firm no or kick her out, after 11 years of marriage, it's a lot harder than that. There's no commitment I can make that I'm not thinking about. Maybe it's possible that I actually like an open marriage. I was a bit of a player back in my college days, So it's not like I don't have the necessary skills to make things work. I would like to know what you think about this, and if I'm making a huge mistake by even considering it in the first place. Edit. Okay? So it's clear that half the people here really think I'm an idiot and aren't afraid to let me know in those not-so-pleasant terms. I get it. You wouldn't do what I'm doing, and that's okay. I won't hate you for it. But for me, giving up on my relationship is a little harder than that. Update. Well, it's certainly been a while since my last post, and I have to say I'm making the most of this open marriage thing. It wasn't my choice. But hey, I might as well make the most of it, right? Just so you know, eventually I told her I wasn't a big fan of the whole thing, and was just agreeing to make her happy. But she didn't seem to care much that she was doing all of this with me, essentially coercing me. She accepted my agreement and ran with it. Well, I'm happy to say that I didn't stay around like a fool while she went out 2 nights a week. Instead, I decided to take care of my own life, because I might as well enjoy the situation. She put me in this position, and I really considered using all those dating apps at first, but then I decided against it and started being a bit more flirty with some of the people I knew at the university outside of work hours. Of course, it was shocking how well that worked for me, especially because I was playing in departments that are very far from my own, and the best part is that it was so easy for everyone to recognize that what we were doing had no commitment. Maybe that's the advantage of casual things between adults of our age, or maybe I just got lucky with the people I was choosing. No one was looking for anything more. I never realized how mature things were for me when one of the 3 people I managed to get involved with, about 2 months after the arrangement, invited me to a conference where she would be speaking. It wasn't supposed to be a date or anything. It was just a very casual invitation. Despite the fact that many people there weren't from my field, I managed to network with them and hear some of the things they were doing, and I made sure to collect some of their business cards before they left. Honestly, I feel like my social life has improved in ways that I like. So, no parties or clubs and things like that. And the openness of the marriage has made that easier. Yes, I'm still making the most of things. It's really the best benefit I've gotten. It's been about 4 months since the whole arrangement started, and things have really turned out well for me. My social life has definitely had a major turn for the better, and it might soon start seeping into my personal life. While I'm making a lot of cool connections, not entirely outside of my field, the problem is that it became very clear that my wife doesn't like how much my social life has improved. Besides me going out with people she perceives as very important figures, she visibly got irritated when I showed her pictures from the conference, and she saw how the speaker who invited me was attractive. It's pretty clear she can't handle the heat of her own decision at this point, and I don't feel bad about it. In fact, it irritates me more than anything else, because she knew I didn't want to do this. And when it comes to her own dates, I really can't care that much. I think at the moment I agreed to her arrangement, a big connection with her kind of broke in me. I'm not going to say I didn't care at all, but after the 3rd or 4th week, I just learned to shut things off, especially because I also started taking care of my own business. This is just an update I felt was worth giving, especially because it seems like her own play is kind of backfiring. I don't feel a drop of guilt for whatever she might feel. It's talk about perfect timing. The day after writing this, she comes up to me and says she wants to talk about the state of the open marriage. That part was very funny to me, because she would either set some new rules to protect herself or cancel everything. I was pretty certain because it was the last option. She said she didn't want to do it anymore because she realized it wasn't what she thought it would be. And then, after a brief heated discussion, starting about the lace maker who risked the sanctity of our marriage for that whim, she let slip, "You're busy making yourself feel more important than you are because you're making friends. Important and classy here and there." That's when I realized it seemed like one of the things she could be having a problem with even more than me sleeping with other people was the fact that I was gaining great social support for myself. I think it's the kind of life she would want to have. But obviously, in this case, I couldn't even bring her into it, since most of my initial contacts were people that came from the new openness of the marriage. How funny is that? So she had to watch everything from the sidelines, and she must have been dying of jealousy. And how angry I was with the whole situation. I initially refused to close the marriage, which really upset her. I don't think I've ever seen her that angry since the bad years we had, and I think that kind of decided it for me. I agreed to close things right then, and she calmed down. The only thing you'll learn is that my idea of closing is very different from hers. I'll admit, for those who said that an open marriage proposal should have been more than enough of a red flag to prompt a divorce. But at that point, I really felt so much for her that I couldn't say goodbye. Fortunately, opening things up was enough to pull me away. And in fact, opening up things really improved my life in ways I didn't expect. So, I'm happy I was too in love to end things, at least initially. Otherwise, I might have missed a lot of good things for me. The fact that I didn't lose that is enough to make me happy. So let me just tell you how things went after my last update here. I agreed to close things, but I knew it would be the end. I feel that an open relationship of any kind just has to be the status quo for the remainder of the relationship, or things will never be the same again. I think that's the case with ours. I stopped seeing her the same way after we officially opened things up, and the moment she asked to close it, it felt like someone stupidly trying to reverse a completely avoidable damage after it had already been done. The next day, while I was at work, I looked for divorce lawyers, but I have to admit it was hard to find the ones who really knew how to do the job. It's crazy that I ended up asking some of the new friends I made in the last few months if they knew anything about divorce lawyers. The closest ones already knew the whole situation about my open marriage, and quickly one of them gave me a recommendation. It was the guy he had used himself, and apparently, this guy did a great job. So, the next day I contacted him, and by the end of the week, I had paid the retainer. The following week, I delivered the divorce papers to my wife at her workplace, and that part wasn't well received. When she came home, I didn't expect it to be, considering she had no idea I was going to divorce her. She tried calling me about 15 times during the day, but I didn't answer any of them. She rushed from work to home, but I wasn't there. When I came back home, it was a shouting match from the moment I closed the car door. It wasn't much of a fight, I think, since I wasn't shouting back. When I went in, I told her I was paying for the open marriage. There was no way she was going to make us go through this and just expect things to go back to normal. That's what I wanted her to know. She didn't like that part, but I genuinely didn't care, and I made that clear. I agreed not of my own free will, and even though things ended up working out for me, it was never my choice. I told her to leave the house, but she absolutely refused, and when things started getting really messy, I just packed up. Let me know if you need anything else. Some things, and I left. I had to stay in a hotel for a few weeks after that, and eventually, I got someone to stay with, so I wasn't racking up a hotel bill. My friend, who let me stay temporarily with him, was kind enough to say I should take more of my things and could store them temporarily at his place. So, I went back home with him. I'm really glad I didn't go alone because that stupid woman had destroyed many of my things. Some of my favorite dress shoes had deep cuts. I had at least 2 expensive watches with broken glass, and the whole place was a mess. She wasn't there at the time, but I made sure to record absolutely everything from the moment we entered. I was going to make sure, without a doubt, that she would pay for everything of mine that she had ruined. I guess that's why they say you should never leave them in the house after the divorce. I contacted my lawyer while I was still there, and he assured me that all that damage would work in my favor. I made sure to take the more expensive items she damaged with me. When we got to the actual divorce proceedings, she really tried to drive me crazy. The reasonable request was that I keep the house, and she would pay me only for the big things she had destroyed, and we would go on without worrying about alimony or her paying legal fees. But no, she refused. She knew she needed alimony, especially because my salary had saved her business from a tough spot many times. We couldn't reach an agreement, so at the end of the day, our case went to a judge. Fortunately, I had messages from the early days of the open marriage pointing to my dissatisfaction with it. I had evidence of her destroying all my things in a rage, and I had a top-notch lawyer who pointed out how I had already done so much to help her start and maintain her salon. She tried to argue that I was physically abusive with her in the marriage, and when the judge pointed out that suggesting an open marriage to a spouse would not be very smart physically, she tried to make it seem like that triggered my violence against her. He asked if she had any hospital records to substantiate her claims, and she said she had never been to the hospital after my attacks. He asked if she had at least a photograph, and she had none. Since then, I never thought of taking selfies after the love of my life turned me into a punching bag. She cried a lot in court, but fortunately, the judge didn't believe any of it. At the end of the day, she didn't get what she wanted. I kept the house, and I was free from alimony. And I made sure she paid for all my expensive things she had destroyed, which totaled over $10,000. I thanked the watches for that, and she also paid my legal fees. It was a big victory. The best part is that even after leaving her and her mess behind, I still have the social advantage that her open marriage gave me. That was the part she hated the most, and even after taking away the whole marriage, that part isn't going anywhere. I love it so much. Maybe I would have spared myself a lot of trouble if I had left much earlier. But I think things happen the way they do for a reason, and I love how things turned out here. How nice it is to have a happy ending. As we all know, when someone suggests an open marriage, it's often less about spicing up the relationship and more about them already having their eye on someone else. Let's be real here. These things never end with both partners happy playing with freedom. Someone always ends up losing. Yes, maybe it would have been easier if I had left sooner, but then we would have missed all of this. The wife played a stupid game, and I hope she's happy with her stupid prize. Thank you for watching until here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos.